Not a day goes by without a catastrophe, a scandal, or on the contrary, a victory for Trump. His ratings seem to be rising again, simply because people saw that the administration stopped focusing on Ukraine and throwing money abroad, and started working closely on lowering prices and raising the standard of living in the United States. I'll cover a couple of important topics in the video that will come out a bit later, and today I'll tell you about the problems Hillary and Bill are having because of their connections with Epstein and some other, let's say, not entirely legal activities they've been involved in, and also about the plans of Maria Corina Machado. I don't know where to put the stress. Maybe Machado, maybe Machado. He's a Nobel laureate, a Mexican, and that means her prospects for the presidency in Venezuela, and also about the problems, accordingly, of the Democratic Party, which arose because of the foolishness they caused with Epstein. So that means, but I will start nevertheless with the fact that it seems the plan to seize Venezuela has been approved, and moreover has even begun to be carried out, let's put it that way. Yes, Maduro has released prisoners and people from mental institutions to the United States, and now they are being sent back. And it seems that together with the new president, this country,
which has emptied its prisons, they sent people from their psychiatric hospitals to our country, and we are deporting them.
Maduro is bringing tons of cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl into the United States.
My family, we are desperate because it happened so quickly.
She is one of 260,000 Venezuelans living and working in the United States under temporary protected status. But by midnight on Friday, they will become undocumented.
The temporary refugee status ended on November 5th. From this moment, Venezuelans no longer have the legal right to live, work, or study in the United States. They must go home because the United States no longer has the ability to feed, provide for, treat, pay for housing, educate, and entertain everyone. If only they were the only ones, but there are millions of them. Not just Venezuelans with the same status or without any status at all, whom we feed, provide for, and even entertain. That's because we simply can't refuse to give people at least a little money for clothes, cigarettes, gas, and cable television. Well, how could we possibly do without that? Yes, we're not animals, but the money's run out, guys. The money's gone. 38 trillion is not enough for the citizens of the United States whom we are obligated to take care of first and foremost. By the way, I'm really interested because about half a year or a year ago I made some comment like, the money's run out. Then people began writing to me from Russia, Ukraine, and all the countries that received this. Yeah, like now you've become stingy, you've gone completely crazy, you won't help anymore, and so on. But we are actually obliged to take care of our own subjects, our own citizens, first and foremost. Well, of course, on the other hand, I feel sorry for these people, sending them into inhumane conditions. Narcotic states and other Latin countries, but other Latin countries don't want to accept them, they don't agree. Well, then the only solution to this problem is to change the regime in Venezuela. Let's imagine that we've forced Maduro out of the country, well, gave him the opportunity to leave.
So if Maduro surrenders, where will he go? Which country will he flee to? Some say to the Middle East, others say to Russia. But, you know, nobody talks about the fact that Nicolas Maduro doesn't have to go anywhere if he just disbands the cartel he's allegedly running, which controls his entire country. But you see, the thing is, it's not just claimed that Nicolas Maduro is the leader of the Cartel of the Suns. And in Nicolas Maduro is the leader.
According to a Facebook post by Kauai County, 44 people were arrested following 6 federal searches conducted at several homes and one business on the Garden Island. Kauai County reports that among those arrested were 2 alleged associates of the foreign terrorist organization Tren de Aragua, based in Venezuela.
How did they get to Hawaii, and how are they there with other people in some kind of organization? It's so far from Venezuela. Of course, the vast majority of Venezuelan citizens in the United States did not come here to become gang members or criminals, but because of the lack of proper screening at the United States southern border. It seems that criminals have taken advantage of this situation in ways we're still discovering, infiltrating every corner of our country. And the president talks about this calmly and rightfully.
Venezuela has acted poorly in another way, likely worse than most, though many others do this too. They emptied their prisons by sending them to our country. They sent us people we don't want. They sent us people from their psychiatric hospitals, and we are deporting them.
The president is right. Venezuela hasn't been very friendly toward the United States, and you know what? It's about time something was done about it. Because that country allowed criminals to enter our country along with their own citizens whose lives were ruined by those very same criminals. It's a terrible situation, but now everything has changed. The trends in Nicaragua and the Venezuelan government are on the verge of collapse, and there are rumors that Maduro will suddenly flee the country and disappear, leaving Paris behind. The ruins of a country that was inaccessible to its people for decades.
Why are there talks about Maduro fleeing? Is he really that afraid of America, or is he more afraid of his own people?
It has been confirmed that Maduro has reached out over the past week and a half, possibly to hint at his departure as well as the departure of his associates, possibly his immediate family and maybe some close high-ranking officials from his inner circle. Is it true or not? Actually, that's the goal of this whole situation. The point is to make him come to this decision himself, or for his circle of advisors to tell him, now it's time for you to go.
Saving their own skin is the first instinct of any tyrant or bandit. They kill and maim so many of their own citizens while in power that worrying about those same citizens when someone attacks them or something happens to them doesn't even cross their mind. Tyrants often wade through blood, indifferent to whether their victims are their own people or others.
But with the country's skies completely closed, this nation, which has unlimited potential thanks to vast natural resources like oil, is now essentially frozen. A country cannot function if its waterways are closed and its airspace is shut down, and the whole nation is basically left in limbo. If the criminals choose to stay, they can, but American surveillance at sea and in the air will monitor them. They have no choice but to surrender, so I'm surprised they haven't. Do you doubt that? But either way, Maduro will leave soon?
Yes, I don't see how he can withstand this. So, I think he's also considering the idea of Venezuela. Does his regime have any leverage? Trump, maybe, and of course that will be connected to oil, right? And that's their main resource. The Maduro regime and the Chavez regime before him, they have run this country into the ground. And so, there's a possibility that he might play that card and offer it as a deal.
I don't believe it for a second. It's a social dictatorship, and look, who would believe them? They nationalized the oil industry in '76. This action brought 21 oil companies and 17 related enterprises, including subsidiaries of Exxon, Shell, and Mobil, under state control. They stole private businesses and just took them over. No one will believe them if they just say, come in, bring your business, and we'll figure it out. These guys can't be trusted. They have no influence.
It always seemed strange to me to hear that the United States wants to develop or seize, let's say, Russian oil or get Venezuelan oil. Yes, we want to get it. Of course, yes, if it's at a good price and under long-term contracts so nothing fluctuates. But to go to Tumen or Kamchatka and drill and then transport it through the wilderness, well, that's not very clear. Why do we need this if we have more oil than Russia, Iran, and Venezuela combined?
What you see here is a show of force. It's a military presence not to destroy boats, but to demonstrate to Maduro that it's in your own interest to leave voluntarily. The president, I believe, has already decided that regime change is what's needed here, just so our viewers understand. In 1989, President George Bush Sr. led a regime change in Panama, which was considered justified there, physically removing the leader through an invasion for regime change in 1994. A few years later, President Clinton did the same. So did we. In the situation with Haiti, when a military dictator overthrew the democratically elected president, the mission was to restore that democratically elected president, Aristide, to power. Presidents have...
So, we had a precedent in our hemisphere, in our sphere of influence, that did not escalate into Iraq-style confrontations. Endless wars, so to speak. President George Bush Sr., President Clinton, and now possibly President Trump. The same thing could happen here, and there's something everyone forgets. And who received the Nobel Peace Prize? Who was it? It was the Venezuelan opposition leader. And we're supposed to think that this alleged head of the Maduro cartel is better suited to ruin his country than a Nobel Peace Prize laureate is to restore it, improve it, and bring prosperity and peace to these people. Do we really think she would be worse than Nicolas Maduro if she came and formed a new government or somehow led them? Absolutely not. But at the same time, progressives and socialists in America, Trump is terrible. There's no evidence that Venezuela is a terrible place. He calls this person a dictator, but that's not true. I mean, these people, I just don't know.
What he's doing. A large-scale campaign, ships, planes, and so on, is mainly focused on Maduro, but the campaign is much broader, and I welcome these efforts. We've been racking our brains over this for years and doing very little, no.
I think you're so right.
Obviously, we want Maduro to leave on his own, but the president has many options, and Maduro knows what they are. A lot of what's happening here is probably more in Maduro's hands than anyone else's.
So, as General Klein Bush explained to us, the elder went into Panama, arrested the country's leaders, and installed the American government. Clinton did the same in Haiti, and Maduro knows perfectly well that the United States Navy Armada gathered off the coast of his country is not there to shoot at motorboats. Maybe he thinks otherwise, but he's not an idiot. Anyone could be, but I'm not an idiot. So the Armada won't leave until the problem is solved, and we just need to figure out what the problem is and understand what we're going to solve. The problem is very simple. I mean, Venezuela is an independent, sovereign state, and they have the right to join any alliances. Well, if they want to work with China, with Russia, with Iran, they can deploy any weapons on their territory, bring them close to the United States border. We don't have a border, but as close as possible. They can transport prisoners and the mentally ill by boat. Venezuela has the right to produce drugs in any quantity. It's not our business to sell them to anyone, and they're not responsible for where they're taken afterwards. But there is a law. It's called the law of the strong. Nearby, not far away, there's no border. But not far from there is the United States of America, which is about 100 to 300 times stronger than Venezuela and the United States of America. They don't like what's happening on the other side of the bay, the ocean, the sea. Previously, they didn't like what was happening in Panama, in Haiti, in Yemen, and so on. So the United States, by the right of the strong, sent its fleet with Marines and missiles to Venezuela and says, get out, President we don't like. Go wherever you want, otherwise we'll take you out with missiles and put someone in charge who we actually like more. As was already said, by the way, in Ukraine as well, remember? So like how they kicked out the legitimately elected president, and as they said in Mexico, and as they said in Canada. And it doesn't matter that we think it's great that they said that. What matters is that the only right we had was the right of the strong, or rather, I was wrong, I misspoke. It was the right of the very strong. And now let's listen to Joe Biden, yes, that very same Joe Biden who, before he joined forces with Obama, was singing a completely different tune.
The problem is that the president's proposals are not large-scale enough to solve this problem. We believe that more needs to be done to stop the flow of drugs across our borders, and we believe that we need to go even further. Let's go after the drug lords where they live with an international task force. These narco-terrorists should have no safe haven, and they need to know that. We have a duty to put dealers away for a very long time, and we must attack the very source where the drugs are coming from. And we must do this not in parts, but all at once. And we must do it now. And there is no reason why we can't do it. We have it, and we have the knowledge.
That was yes, Joe Biden. That's not artificial intelligence. Well, there's really no intelligence there at all. But back when members of the Democratic Party could still say things that made sense, that is, when they were guided by more or less common sense and not just party discipline. It was very interesting. Trump will win, but how will Maduro be elected? So run, defend yourself, shoot, hide in a bunker, do the same thing Saddam Hussein did in Iraq. He climbed into a pit and stayed there for 3 days. I would advise him to run while he still can, but there's a chance that somewhere, wherever he runs to, his own people might take him out. By the way, I'm sure there's a reason for that. Well, the new president of Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado, definitely knows who can put her on the throne, and that's why she's getting the Nobel Prize. She said that she dedicates it to whom? Donald J. Trump.
We, the Venezuelan people, are deeply grateful to President Trump for how he supported democracy and freedom in both Americas.
She dedicated the Nobel Prize, as she said, to a person who deserved it much more than she did. Thank you. We seem to be in the penultimate chapter of Venezuela. In the domain of socialist drug dealers, we are madhouses, and we are approaching the first chapter of Venezuela. A friend of the United States, part of the United States sphere of influence, according to the new Trump doctrine. So when will they finally arrest Bill and Hillary Bill Hill? I hear this very, very often, and it's been a long time now. Gentlemen, I would really like that, but it's not that simple. So the thing is, the Clintons had an entire team. Again, I'm just going by rumors, all sorts of stories, notes, and so on, as they say. I can't confirm it myself, but there was an entire team that scrubbed any information linking the Clintons to anything that existed. Well, let's say not exactly complimentary. There, yes, 84 people either committed suicide or died under very strange circumstances. All of them were either going to court, were witnesses, or wrote something about the crimes of this star couple. It seems like they were cleaning up everyone and everything, but somewhere in the cracks and out there on the internet, it looks like something still survived. It was just a lack of political will, but now it seems to have appeared. I felt sorry for her, said Trump. So, after the first term, and just as he was starting the second, he said, well, after all, she's the president's wife, right? Well, he continued, they have crossed all the boundaries.
Something disturbing surfaced in Epstein's files. A claim related to Hillary Clinton and one of her former staffers, Vince Foster.
Oh, he was my best friend, Barbara. He was a colleague, a partner, and I miss him very much.
According to circulating rumors, Epstein allegedly claimed that Hillary Clinton was in a relationship with Foster. Vince Foster was not just an ordinary employee. Bill and Hillary Clinton brought him into the administration, and he was a longtime friend of Bill Clinton. Shortly after these events, Foster was found dead. Officially, it was ruled a suicide. The top news of this hour is the apparent suicide of White House lawyer Vince Foster, who was found dead yesterday. This is where the questions arise. If you look at the bigger picture, dozens of people, some estimate the number at 40 or 50, were in one way or another connected to powerful political circles, and their deaths were also ruled as suicides. This fact alone makes people think. At the same time, the Clinton administration faced a major scandal known as Travelgate. Several employees were fired, and critics claimed this was done to make room for friends. Vince Foster was reportedly under a lot of pressure and intense scrutiny during that period. After his death, the official cause was said to be depression. But now, as the Epstein files are being discussed again, and his name comes up alongside these statements, people are re-examining this story and asking new questions.
And what about Epstein? Well, what's the issue?
Do you have any comments? Alleged accusations of ties to Jeffrey Epstein? No?
I think the evidence is obvious.
He's right. The evidence is right there on your face, head, and forehead.
Will we see Bill and Hillary Clinton testify about their connection to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein?
They were ordered to do it.
The House Oversight Committee issued subpoenas to the Clintons and other prominent Democrats in August, but the Clintons refused to appear. Now the committee is threatening to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress if they do not show up for in-person testimony. Bill Clinton is apparently scheduled for December 17 and Hillary for December 18. This morning, 18 minutes past the hour, we have a live broadcast from Capitol Hill as well as the news.
On the Jeffrey Epstein case, a federal judge has ordered the Trump administration to provide a description of all the documents it plans to release about the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. This is being done to protect his victims. In a sensational statement on the scandals in Washington, Attorney General Pam Bondi has launched a full-scale Department of Justice investigation into former President Bill Clinton and other prominent Democrats over their alleged ties to convicted trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. This is not a political stunt. A federal criminal investigation led by one of America's most influential prosecutors, targeting some of the most powerful figures in the Democratic establishment. On Friday, November 14th, 2025, Bondi announced that Jay Clayton, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, would lead the investigation into what she called deeply troubling ties between Epstein and influential figures in the Democratic Party. Clayton, one of the most capable and reliable prosecutors in the country, now has all the resources of the Justice Department to find out who knew what, when, and what crimes may have been committed. This investigation started after new letters revealed explosive details about Bill Clinton's connection to Epstein, including extended stays on his private island, numerous flights on the infamous Lolita Express, and messages indicating Clinton's awareness of Epstein's criminal activities involving minors. The emails also implicate tech magnate Reid Hoffman, ex-Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, and John Pierpont Morgan Chase, in what President Trump calls one of the biggest cover-ups in American history. But here's what makes this story absolutely explosive. The investigation was triggered by a desperate attempt by House Democrats to smear Trump with selectively leaked Epstein emails. Their strategy turned into a complete fiasco. The emails they released to discredit Trump actually contained much more compromising information about the Democrats, especially Bill Clinton. And now those same Democrats are facing a federal investigation for the very crimes they tried to pin on their political opponents. The whole story is about how the Epstein scandal caught up with Bill Clinton. Why did the Justice Department start the investigation now? What crimes are being investigated? And what does this mean for the future of the Democratic Party?
Trump really didn't want to expose those who flew to Epstein's pleasure island, which the locals called the island of pedophiles. Probably because, well, Trump didn't want to make it public, since there were a lot of people who only flew there once. Maybe a one-time visit didn't mean anything. However, when it was the second, third, or 16th time, it already meant something. But even flying there just once, a person was automatically considered a pedophile. And not to mention the law, it would be a blow to his whole life, really, to his family, children, and reputation. But the Democrats were just asking for it. deciding that Trump wasn't publishing it because he and his buddies were involved. Although Biden's people had these documents for 4 years, they searched and found nothing. But, what if the Democrats also started demanding the disclosure of names and published some data that seemed to indicate a connection between Trump and pedophiles? So they got their own boomerang back. You wanted it so much, here you go. The former United States Secretary of the Treasury under Obama was forced to leave Harvard in disgrace. Both Clintons because, apparently both of them used Epstein's girls. And now on December 17 and 18, they have to appear before Congress for questioning. Let's see what illness Hillary comes down with and what kind of act Bill puts on. They're masters at this. So maybe on the contrary, he'll get sick, and she'll be the one putting on an act this time, not him. Yes, but either way, remember December 17 and 18. Something might happen then. Maybe just something ordinary. We can't come because, maybe they'll go after all. And then get your sunflower seeds or popcorn, whatever you like, and goodbye.